You wouldn't usually think that Netflix's family-friendly smash hit Stranger Things and the violent and gory Amazon Prime series The Boys could have anything in common. We're here to tell you that there's more to both these shows than fans might realize at first. Both these shows continue to keep us on the edge of our seats in their latest seasons with their expanding lore, and that is where we'll find their similarities. First things first, do shady, evil corporations ring a bell? Hawkins National Lab and Vought International might have very different reasons for doing what they do, but experimenting on infants and children to create artificial superheroes seems to be a popular MO for these organizations, and they don't just stop there. Time and again, we've seen both Vought International and the unknown powers that be behind Hawkins Lab harm and trap innocents just so their agenda continues to unfold. And you might think that Hawkins Lab seems to be a thing of the past in the world of Stranger Things, but Season 4 and its Vecna storyline has left fans with tons of new questions. Who is behind the mysterious government program? How did they turn Eleven from ordinary Jane to a superhero with powers? Speaking of Vecna, we can't help but notice the similarities that he has with some of the flawed characters of The Boys. Take Homelander, for instance. Both of them are poster boys for what happens when people with powers and zero control are left to their own devices while propped up by these organizations. Even more, they show how people like Vecna and Homelander can turn on the very organizations that forced them on their villainous paths. What does this mean for the common points in the two shows? It makes us think that we should learn from The Boys and its capitalistic villains and consider what new ways Eleven's past could come back to haunt her. Because if we know anything about these Big Brother-esque organizations, it's that they don't stay down for long. Secondly, collateral damage seems to be the name of the game. It's pretty obvious from the beginning that Stranger Things' campy horror front hides a darker behind-the-scenes story. But as the show goes on, even the ragtag group of kids leading the charge seem to be suffering the guilt of what has happened so far. The most memorable moment of this is what Max goes through at the end of Season 3 with the death of her brother Billy. It reminds us that there are real-life consequences for the death-defying shenanigans that have been common in this show. The Boys, on the other hand, have moved past even the guilt stage and actually enjoy the collateral damage that their so-called superheroes wreak. And this surprises no one, with the characters being made up of psychopaths and sociopaths mixed in with people who just don't care beyond their own profit. While Stranger Things has a moral compass that's far above anything the boys want to deal with, it does make us wonder about what might happen in the distant future if these kids continue to hold the weight of the world on their shoulders. Now, let's turn to the family feels. Complicated family dynamics are the bread and butter of many shows. With Stranger Things, these are easy to spot. The Byers, Wheelers, and many other Hawkins families form the core of the show's emotional drama. You wouldn't expect any similar wholesome feels in the brutal counterpart The Boys, right? But we think there's more to the families in The Boys. What we find interesting is the way family connections are leveraged in The Boys. The complicated web that is discovered throughout Season 1 about Butcher's wife and her son with Homelander is shocking enough to be the final scene for the season finale. This immediately creates an emotional dilemma for Butcher that is played out in Season 2. The tension here easily reminds us of the suspense of classic Season 1 Stranger Things when Will Byers originally disappeared. Beyond the all-American families that we see in Hawkins, Stranger Things doesn't actually shy away from creating some drama. Eleven's journey from her manipulative relationship with her papa to being Hopper's adopted daughter immediately comes to mind here. And what's more, the show even brought her back to her papa's influence right when she was separated from Hopper. The similar journey that Ryan faces in The Boys can be looked at the same time. The messages that we get from the family feels in both shows may be vastly different, but you have to admit that nothing seems to motivate our characters as well as a beloved family member losing their life to careless superheroes turned killers, and this motivation is very much shared by both shows. Next, the false criminal charges that haunt the heroes. One of the best storylines that fans got from the latest installment of Stranger Things was Eddie Munson's. We all wondered what the showrunners intended to do with Eddie when he was introduced as the D&D loving pariah of Hawkins High. What really blew us away was the heart with which the character came to live, and I'm sure we all felt outraged on his behalf when he was blamed for Vecna's murders. However, it did lead to some excellent investigative work from the Stranger Things kids, which instantly transported us back to the classic tropes of escaping false accusations and witch hunts and solving the mystery of who really murdered those high schoolers. The Boys may have had a more bloody path to the same storyline in Season 2, but you can't deny the satisfaction that we got when Vought was finally somewhat exposed. The charges that The Boys faced may have been more serious than the Stranger Things crew, but the payoff was better for it in the end. The writers of both Stranger Things and The Boys seem to have similar ideas about the entertainment that we can get from seeing the heroes work their way out from a corner. But is superpower expansion the future of Stranger Things? While this may seem far-fetched at first, we have to at least think about how the government's original plan was to have a whole range of child soldiers to fight off the Soviet commies. And if we take a page out of The Boys book, all the signs point to it. The blueprint for using superheroes for more than PR has been set by Vought, especially with the lengths that they went to in order to get Homelander in the military. Eleven was being trained for similar missions as a remote spy when she escaped. Now, this leads to the question of what this means for the final season of Stranger Things. We can assume that we might finally get some answers about who is pulling the strings behind the mysterious government programs that keep cropping up, and more importantly, do their motives stop at just using these child superheroes for US defense purposes? We think not. It is entirely possible that the plot could take a turn and even explain how the Soviets got a hold of the monsters that we saw in Season 4. Speculating from what we know so far about some of the characters in Stranger Things, we would also point out how kids like Will and Max now have connections to the other side. This could prove to have the same effect as Compound V had on the characters in The Boys. Lastly, heroes losing control. Is it a pattern? Superheroes losing control seems to be the core of The Boys, so we've been seeing up front and center what are the consequences that result from it. Stranger Things, on the whole, doesn't have the same issue. However, it is unmistakable the showrunners may be giving us some hints about what could be. In Eleven's case, her incident at the roller skating rink reminds us of how much worse it could have been if she had her powers when she lost control in an emotional moment and injured another girl. The superheroes in The Boys are meant to be villains almost, even at the beginning of the show. But what happens if we consider how they started on their bloody path? Were they always as brutal, or were they perhaps similar to characters such as Eleven in the beginning? We think that this is the most important commonality between these two shows. The Boys and Stranger Things both have almost cautionary messages at their heart, and if our earlier theory about even more characters gaining powers proves to be true, then this idea will be even more important. So fans can continue tuning in for all the shocking ways in which both shows move ahead, but it's interesting to see the ways in which it could have gone a different direction for either of them. We hope we've managed to cover a lot of the similarities that we saw in these two shows. Needless to say, they may be very different on the surface, but that does not mean we can't see the ways in which they have many things in common. That's a wrap for this video. What other similarities can you spot between The Boys and Stranger Things? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.